Hi, my name is Bob Brown and welcome to my 8 and 35mm channel. The purpose of this video is strictly to do an update on something that happened with my previous video, and that is my scanner crapped out on me, my V750. It was a great scanner until it wasn't, and so I did replace it with the V600, also an Epson. Well, what I'm going to do is pick up where I left off on that one, kind of show you some scans that I couldn't do before, which I did do here, and let's take a look at that. This is my new scanner, the Epson Perfection V600 Photo. It replaced my old V750, which is now on its way to our local recycle center. It was a great scanner until it wasn't. This newer V600 has higher resolution capabilities than the old 750. I showed you part of this graphic in my previous video. It's the one on the left side. That's how the film goes inside of a front-feeding scanner, which you saw in my other video with my Nikon LS5000. The image on the right shows the placement of negatives with a flatbed scanner. I don't know why one set of negatives face down and the other set of negatives face up, because they both read from the bottom up. The image on the right shows my 750 when it worked right. The replacement for that V750 is now the V850, and it does have a higher resolution than my old one. As a quick reminder, the images on the left are images from the old V750. You can clearly see it produced garbage. I'm not sure at what point that thing went bad, but either way, it had to go. Here are my scans with the old V750 at the top and my new Epson V600 at the bottom. The quality differences are obviously night and day. Now let's compare scans from the V600 and the LS5000. The ones along the top aren't processed at all. You can tell right away they both yielded great results. The two highlighted and processed images at the bottom were from 1985 with me and my puppy. Her name was Brandy. These other two highlighted images are my wife and Brandy. Both scanners produce great results. If I had to scrutinize the two images from the V600 and the LS5000, I'd say the Nikon just barely edges out the V600. There is one thing I don't like about the Epson, and that is it crops in just so slightly on the images. And I couldn't find any way to make an adjustment to back away from that crop. If you recall, this is a photograph I scanned in the previous video. It's the one on the left scanned with the V750. To appreciate how bad that scan is, you have to look at the one on the right. That's with the new V600, which I think you'll agree came out great. Here are all of my settings I used for the Epson scanning software. I thought it might be helpful as a frame of reference. You don't necessarily have to use the same settings, but it gives you an idea of what I did. And finally, I'd like to finish up with some medium format negative scans. I used ViewScan for the V750 scans, and I used the Epson scan software, which are the panels on the left of the images, for the V600 scans. I really didn't want to use these photos because, well, I didn't want it to look like I'm showing off or anything, but these were the only negatives I had in medium format. My friend Steve Acosta shot these in early 1985, the day after my competition. I scanned the top two images with my V750, you know, the defective one, which I already recycled, by the way. The bottom two scans were with the V600. Kind of obvious since I put on there V600. The scans with the V600 came out great. However, the V750 scans were obviously awful. which is really not fair to the V750 because, after all, it did go bad on me. I just wanted you to see how good that V600 did with medium format negatives. If you're in the market for a scanner, let's take a look at the pluses and minuses of the ones I have. Hopefully, these pluses and minuses will apply to pretty much any scanners. Two of them are flatbeds. The difference between the flatbeds are features, and they function pretty much the same, but the features are not. And also, there's a front feeder style, which I have, which was the Nikon, if you remember, and that one was amazing, but it also has upsides and downsides. So if you're in the market, this might be helpful. I don't know, but hopefully it will. Let's take a look at those pluses and minuses. All right, let's compare these three scanners. Two of them are Epsons and one's a Nikon. The V850 on the left and the V600 in the middle are both flatbed scanners. I think those two scanners are probably the most common scanners most people use. The V850 on the left is almost identical to my old V750. However, the V850 is an upgraded version of my old 750. The scanner on the right is a Nikon LS5000 ED, which by now you know is the model I own. Now let's take a little closer look at each one of these scanners so you can decide for yourself what features you want in a scanner. Each one of these scanners produce excellent quality scans. They also produce 4800 optical resolution, which is also excellent. Let's now look closer at the V850. It can scan pretty much any size negative. It also can do slides and photos. The reason it can do larger negatives and photographs is because it can use the entire area of the scanning surface. Also, the media trays are pretty decent quality. And finally, on the plus side, the scanner is still in production, although I don't think it's had any upgrades in quite some time. On the downside, it ain't cheap. It's $1,300 US. Also, scans are a little slow because that is the nature of flatbed scanners. It's also a little cumbersome to use because you do have to open and close the lid, set up the trays, and do all the scans, which all can be very time consuming. And finally, I don't see any future upgraded models coming out. Then again, you probably don't need a newer version anyway. Now for the V600. On the plus side, it can do various size negatives up to medium format, and it can scan slides and photos. Compared to the V850, the price isn't too bad. It's only $349 US, and it's still in production. As for the negatives, well, it just doesn't feel very solid, especially when you compare it to the V850. The media trays feel a little flimsy, especially compared to the V850 trays. And those trays utilize only a small area of the scanning surface, especially when you compare it to the 850. Setups can be kind of cumbersome and frustrating because of those flimsy trays. And one thing I forgot is the V600 tends to crop in on everything, and I don't really like that. Now let's take a look at the LS5000. On the plus side of things, man, that thing's built like a tank. It is a solid build. It's super fast and easy to set up. There's no glass where you have to clean it because of hazing or things like that. And finally, it scans the entire frame, which is exactly what I want in a scanner. Now let's take a look at some of the negative aspects. Since it's long out of production, prices for the thing are all over the map. I've seen prices for that unit anywhere between $800 and $5,000. Just be patient and one will pop up at a reasonable price. That's how I got mine. One problem I ran into was the fact that the thing was a 32-bit scanner. Well, my computer's 64-bit and I just couldn't get the software to run. But I did have ViewScan, which is a software that runs scanners, and it works great. Their database covers pretty much every scanner on the planet. Here's one final negative. Every once in a while, the negative doesn't line up properly, so you see half of one image and half of the next image. I found two solutions to that problem. One is you can just eject the film, turn it 180 degrees, and then reinsert it. If you have the same problem after doing that, then grab each side of the negative and pull it just so slightly, and be careful, you don't want to break it, and then pull it enough to where you can see the entire image again. Those two things worked for me every time. Well, I think that's pretty much it. I think I'm out of material here. Okay, so now in the next video, we're going to process some images. And when we do, you'll be able to apply this to any image. Okay, well, I hope this was helpful, a little bit at least, and that's it. Hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.